Alright guys, so I ended up culling back a tremendous amount of our flock yesterday, and that included 5 drakes that are actually going to go in the freezer, and then 16 hens that found new homes and 4 goslings because it just wasn't manageable in the small space that we have. Their actual permanent run area is only, 1,800 square feet or so, and their coop is 64 square foot, so it's just not reasonable to have that many animals on such a small property, especially when I'm hatching out more and I'm looking for very specific traits. So we went with the mind that we are going to trade some of the goslings for some meat ducks we could go ahead and put in the freezer so we wouldn't have to race them all. We ended up getting cash for the goslings, and also we got Quackers here who is supposed to go home with us to go to freezer camp, and he ended up being named by our boys when we got to the farm to drop off the other animals within a few minutes of them meeting him, and he actually turned out to be one of the funniest, most entertaining ducks. And he's so intelligent. He already figured out the staircase and everything else, whereas the other ducks I tried to show the pond weren't quite understanding what the newly built staircase was all about. He's having the time of his life cleaning, but of course he's a free-range duck. He had 2 acres plus all of the field behind them to range and swim in ponds, so he understands what he's doing, whereas everyone else is still kind of figuring it out. Now, in this pond, it's our goldfish pond, and we also have 40 minnows that we put in here thinking the ducks would eat them, but so far no one's eating the minnows, and they're actually swimming around while the duck's on the surface. The minnows are the tiny pink looking fish that we bought that are in here.
Oh.
They're way smaller. How'd you sleep?
Great.
Great. Are you just waking up?
Yeah, just woke up.
Saturdays, the boys kind of stay up really late and do their own thing. It's their day off during the week, so we just let them do their own things and sleep in on Sunday morning. So we're all well rested. So you have a lot of work to do today, huh? Yeah. And look at this. What do you think of Quackers? You like him?
Yeah.
You want to keep him forever?
Yes.
I think we're going to. He's really big compared to our other ducks. If he stands next to him. Oh man, easily probably 8 years.
Great, yeah.
Yeah, ducks live a lot longer than people realize. I mean, remember we had that chicken, what was her name? Dottie? Was it Dottie? Dolly. It was Dolly. We had an old English bantam chicken, and she lived to be over 10 years old, and she actually laid eggs up until she was like 8 years old, but towards the end, instead of laying prolifically an egg every other day, 3 to 4 eggs a week, she started where she only would lay like 3 eggs a season, and she still managed to hatch those out, which is crazy to me. She was one of the best chickens we ever had, and probably so small. Fun size, huh? And just carry her. She was really sweet and unbelievably friendly. Look. Oh, there's a minnow. Way to go. I just saw it. It's kind of under the surface of the water. It was just up at the surface. It's a dangerous place to be with a duck in the pond, huh? So, over here, we went ahead and moved the kiddie pond and refilled it, my husband did, and it's already full of mud because instead of getting in the big pond, which they could do, they decided to take over the little pond and not let anyone else have it, which makes sense for the baby's goslings because their legs are still trying to figure out, they're building streams, still trying to figure out how to fully support their whole bodies and climb and everything else. But for the adult geese, just pure laziness. But finally they got all the mud on them off of them because they still insist on going to the other side and wading in all of that mud. And today, even on top of that mud, I accidentally left the door open when I got distracted, kind of dreaming about what I could do with this area and watching our new duck, who has made, I guess, an alliance with one of the ducks that I hatched out, and they really like each other. And I was distracted by that, and all 5 of these geese escaped into a muddy part of our yard that's kind of meadowy, and were eating the grass, and it was fun to watch, but also I knew that if I let them stay out there much longer, they would just kind of run off and do goodness only knows what. So last thing we need is to get in trouble for having escaped geese in the city, when right now we're kind of flying under the radar. Everything's cool with 4-H. They're not violating any city ordinances. They have more than enough room. Strangely enough, the city only requires us to have 10 square foot per goose, which I'm going to tell you right now, that is not enough room for a goose whatsoever. But that's all they require. Now, I did quickly realize that the number of animals I had just weren't sustainable. And since I'm trying to hatch out animals and kind of build up our flock and have certain genetics in it, I really had to be careful of what I kept with the space that I had. So I managed to make a couple $100, more than a couple $100, get a bunch of hatching eggs, get the chicken hatching eggs my boys wanted, get some ducks that I wanted, including some special ducks that I've never had before. So hopefully those hatch. They're very interesting gray eggs, but because the hen is smaller and they're not your typical like Cayuga egg or anything like that, they're pretty cool. So I'm excited to see if those hatch and what kind of mix they are. But it's incredible to kind of have that opportunity, and I was really nervous kind of going out and meeting new people and putting ourselves out there by selling some of our flock, but it worked out really well. And now I have 5 full incubators. All 5 are full. My aunt from Plum Love and Life, she was amazing. She let us borrow several of her incubators already. That 1 already, and then 2 more. So we have 3 of hers and then 2 of our own up and running. So I'm really thankful for her and letting us do that. And reality is I really need to invest in a cabinet incubator now because this is getting out of hand. But at least with these large numbers of ducks hatching, I can really see like who grows what, kind of study how they look at what age, and hatch out everything that I want for my homestead, and then all the extras I can sell. And that definitely supplements feed if I want to add to the garden, anything else. So I'm kind of getting over my fear and worry about branching out and putting myself out there a little more, because realistically I just kind of did this to break even on my own homestead, because if I can feed my family for free based off of what I sell and not have to be put out by anything, that's really ideal. So anything over the top is just a bonus for me, and that's pretty exciting. So you can kind of see we are down to 3 baby goslings. The other 4 went to their new home yesterday, and I think that was probably the best decision I made. I don't think, as much as geese eat at least 30% of their body weight a day, so they can clear out grass in no time. And I want to feed my geese with primarily forage. So in order to do that, I realized that I needed to cut back on the baby goslings, especially since there's a pretty big chance that she'll hatch another clutch out late spring, anywhere through December. I mean, even if she waits an entire year, that's still December of this year that she'll start laying again. And that's a lot of geese. But my goal is to kind of maybe raise up some geese. I did trade a couple that I thought were female, so I'm not sure how many of these 3 are female, but one for sure, she's pretty gray over there, and I'm thinking that she's a female, the one in the pond kind of cleaning her feathers behind the crazy duck. That's one of my 2.5-year-old ducks. Actually, she may be older than 2 now. Maybe she's closer to 3. She's one of my older girls. Don't hiss at me. Very rude. Cranky. I barely recognize you, Dorian, with all the mud going off of you and your feathers all fluffed out. Look at those pink feet. I would have thought you had gray feet, sir. You think geese love water, but no, they actually love mud. They just love trampling through things. Having a bunch of white geese, it's even more funny. So if you kind of check out our goslings, you can see they're over a month old. They're about 5 weeks now, somewhere around the 5-week range. I have to look back over, but I'm pretty sure they're over 5 weeks. And they're feathering out nicely. Last time I made a video on them, they didn't have a lot of wing feathers coming in, and now they have feathers coming in on their wings, and they're looking good. So with Ebden geese, the females tend to have more gray on them until they're over a year old, and this one definitely has some gray on her tail. So I'm like, maybe I'll get lucky and have at least one female gosling. My ideal flock here would be probably 3 hens to one gander ratio. I know that geese can be paired up one-on-one, but that's too much for me. I think in a flock like this, it's, you know, 1 geese to 2 or 3, 1 gander to 2 or 3 geese. It just works for me. And I've heard of some people going up to even 5 to 7, upwards of 10 being the absolute max per gander. Maybe some do more, but to me that's way too much. So this works out nicely. So if you see, there's this huge mud puddle. I just threw some cardboard on top of it so that I can step in here, because that's the one place that hasn't dried up yet. And my thoughts are that I can actually lay some soil and stuff over the top of it and fill it in, or just pull them up when it dries. Either way. That way we can kind of raise that area. So, but this will probably eventually be kind of a garden area, was the goal, but the animals have kind of taken over. That happens. Animals just continue to expand everywhere. They've taken over all the grass, eaten everything, because we weren't expecting the geese to start laying so soon. We let them have this area when they were hatching out their goslings, and the goslings were young. Eventually we need to take that back or expand the backyard. We've kind of changed our ideas around so I can have more of the backyard, and my husband's going to have the area in front of the garden to kind of rock in and maybe turn into, I guess, a work area and eventually a shop. So I think that's a pretty good compromise. I'm pretty excited about what's to come. Look at this. We're losing feathers while we bathe. Are you gonna get out? I know you know how to get out of here, sir. Is this just your permanent home? He's so happy. He really is sweet. I think Peckin's gonna be one of my new duck breeds. I thought I could raise meat from the Pekin ducks, because the reality is that these guys are just so small. It's not even worth it. It just sometimes feels necessary, because obviously the drake to hen ratio gets really high, and we really have found that we only actually need 1 drake to every 20 hens. This guy, he really likes the ladies. He does his job maybe too well. And I found that Welsh Harlequin drakes tend to be pretty prolific, and they can easily take care of 10 to 15 hens, but 20, no problem. I don't see an issue with my fertility rate whatsoever, because out of 66 eggs that I put in the incubator, 3 didn't develop well, and for sure 2 of those were fertile and just didn't make it past the first week, and the other one was only 1 holler. So we have a really good fertility rate, absolutely. And then out of all of those eggs, we ended up having 10 total over the course of the last couple of weeks that didn't do well. The first 3, then we had a couple that rotted, a couple that stopped developing, so on and so forth. And so now we're down to about 56 eggs, and they are all currently on lockdown. So I'm excited to see what's going to happen. I know that I went ahead and candled them before I laid them on their side, and several of them had already started making their way into the air cell at the top of the egg, which is really exciting. So I'll definitely be selling a ton of ducklings this year, and my hope is that it will be more good than anything. I will have a good experience doing so and be able to supplement all of my ducks' feed throughout the summer, and possibly even expand the garden doing so, but really supplement the ducks' feed and supplement all the bedding for the ducks and our 2 pet rabbits. We do have rabbits. They are Rex. They are a meat breed. They have never been bred. We only have 2 females, and honestly, they've become pets, so they will be here for, who knows, as long as they live. That could be up to 10 years. It could be longer. I really don't know what to expect, but they come inside and everything else. Yesterday they were inside hanging out all day, in the boys' bedroom while we cleaned out the coop. So they don't like to be held by me, but they are very friendly and they're cool with just sitting next to them. So I really enjoy having them. It brings a lot of joy to the boys too. Hi, baby girl. This is Shaniqua, guys. That's what my son named her. And he absolutely adores her. She is his favorite duck. She's one that we hatched out. And she's the only one out of this cross that we ended up keeping because she had the bill color that we were really hoping for. But her pattern is absolutely beautiful. She is a mallard and a Welsh Harlequin cross. So she is definitely different. She looks so much bigger than she is because of how her feathers are fluffed out. But she's fairly small. And when you pick her up, she's extremely light. So I was not sure if she'd be able to fly or not because her mom is Welsh Harlequin. And even her dad is only half mallard. His mom was a Welsh Harlequin hen and his dad was a wild mallard that kind of flew in and mated. And so she is 3/4 Welsh Harlequin and 1/4 mallard of some nature. And it's really cool to see how she's feathered out and kind of how she's doing. So she's the only one we ended up keeping, and we hatched out a lot of birds out of that cross. I say that, it's 30, but that's a lot at one time to have 30 at one time to kind of get to choose from. So she was our favorite, and she has earned a name, and she is kind of staying here permanently. So I'm excited to see how she does. She's already laying. She started laying at 4 months old, large white eggs, which is really cool. And so I'm very excited to continue seeing how she grows and what comes of that. And then these guys over here are our baby Welsh Harlequins that we hatched. They're the ones that are in our most recent video about sexing them based off of bill color. And so far 2 are definitely females and one's kind of getting the color changing on his head and neck. So he might actually be a male, but he hasn't feathered it enough for us to be able to tell yet. And so we'll see what happens. We may end up with 3 females, which is perfectly fine, but I'm still thinking 2 females and a male. Y'all are hiding from me. All 3 of them running behind the pond. I know I saw some minnows, but every time I get close, there's one below the surface. They kind of run off. How is it that a human outside the pond filming is more terrifying than a duck that actually eats minnows? You're not that intimidating, quackers, it turns out. It just dawned on me that in all this I didn't kind of show off. We just took a bunch of cinder blocks and kind of made an area for them to walk up. Eventually our plan is kind of make a spiral filled with dirt that they could walk all the way up, maybe some rocks included, and kind of put that all the way around the pond and then add some banana trees and all that really cool stuff. Plants that are tall enough and established enough that they're not just going to come and eat them all at one time. So I think it would be really cool. Originally this was supposed to just be a garden and seating area with a pretty pond, and we were planning on putting a little waterfall. But, well, I guess we'll see what happens. This may still turn into that, but it really depends on what I do with our flock and everything else, because ultimately I'm getting to the point where I'm more interested in selling my ducks and getting some seasonal ducks or trading them for different breeds that I can raise for meat, and just raising meat seasonally. I know that kind of takes away from being fully self-reliant on your homestead, but it works out for me when we have a small space to mostly focus on vegetables and kind of raise our ducks for ourselves and sell what's extra. Are you ready to get out? He's not sure what he's gonna do. It may just be that I'm too close to the staircase and he's like, no, this crazy woman's gonna try to hold me again. I'm excited, guys. I know I'm rambling on about my ducks and homestead and all of our plans, but that's what spring is for. It's for dreaming and making all those winter dreams kind of start becoming a reality and preparing for everything else. Great thing about the gardens is they're not magically made in the season that they're cultivated. They're made in the seasons before, where you're dreaming about gardens and making plans and ideas, and then slowly they come into fruition and suddenly you have plants growing. That's just kind of how it works. It's a slow process. So I'm excited to kind of show everyone where it goes. There's still so much that is happening. We have not just our flock that's been greatly reduced, and actually let me show you real fast. So aside from Shaniqua, this is pretty much what's left of our homestead of the ducks, plus the 3 babies and quackers. So there's not a lot. We went, let's see, 6, 7 laying hens, plus our drake, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. We have 12 ducks total, including the 3 babies, and then 5 goslings. So that's a big difference. And then I'll hatch out all of these ducklings, see if there are any I'm interested in keeping, but reality is most of those will probably get sold to kind of fund all the projects here that we have until we can expand more. I think about 10 ducks is going to be what helps feed our family pretty much on a weekly basis. That should be enough duck eggs for us. And as far as the geese, the original idea is that they would be good to raise for meat for the homestead because they just don't lay enough eggs for it to be a good egg source. Although goose eggs are completely edible, you can eat them. They're massive, so they probably could fit, I don't know, 8 to 10 eggs inside of it. So they're huge, but it's just not, I mean, our hen over here, she laid 9 eggs and hatched out 7 of them. So you can kind of see how that's just not ideal for an egg source. But Ebden geese are a meat bird and a commercial meat bird, so they could make an excellent meat source. But for me, it may just be easier until we get more pasture and more land that we can grow on, just to focus on kind of hatching out goslings and then keeping a couple of females to continue hatching out more eggs every season, but then sell all the extra females and males to other people. I think that's just going to be the easiest thing for us, and probably what works the best while we're still on under an acre of land. Now, one day we are thinking we'll expand and get multiple acres, and then we can just have our geese fully on pasture, and we'll be able to raise how many ever we want very quickly. But no, I'm so happy with where we're at. So I just want to encourage you to kind of keep dreaming, keeping those ideas coming and everything else, because even if you're only putting in 1 garden bed a season, I mean, that could be 1 in summer, 1 in spring, 1 in summer, 1 in fall. They could be small. Or you're putting in 1 garden bed a year. If you're on a property, we've been here 7 years and we're just kind of seeing it blossom out. I mean, if you're putting 1 garden bed in 7 years, that could be pretty substantial, you know. Over time, we grow a good amount of our food in about 600 square foot of space, but those blackberry beds that you see all the time, those are each 64 square feet. So all of that is grown in 128 square foot of space. That's not a lot. So even if you have a small yard, you can definitely do it. So that's all I have for today. I hope all of y'all just keep on keeping on and don't be discouraged if you're in a small place and you want to raise birds, or just start off by raising a couple of ducks or chickens for eggs, or even a small garden, because it's definitely possible.